everybody. Thanks for coming today. It's lunchtime. I hope you've all eaten. My name's Bob. I'm from Work World Leaders. We focus on workplace well-being as a strategic priority for business growth within organizations. Before we get started today, we've got a fantastic panel. I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute. I just want to ask you all, how are you feeling about your own well-being today? So scan the QR code and tell us how you're feeling about your own well-being today. Hopefully that appears on screen, that question. Guys,
how are you feeling, Bob?
I'm feeling fantastic. Okay, if you just scan the QR code and let's see how you're all doing. Awesome. Just one awesome. Either everybody's feeling awesome. Tired, yeah, it's Friday. It's Friday afternoon.
Tianin was saying TGIF.
Friday, I get that. Friday indeed.
All right, whilst you're doing that, let's just have a quick introduction of the panel. Pamela, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Bob. Okay, I'm Pamela. I'm with Great Place to Work. I'm a senior consultant and research lead there. Well, we believe basically that every place should have a great workplace culture because it's not about building that culture just for some people, but for everyone in the organization. Me personally, I joined Great Place to Work about 3 years ago. And I have that vested interest in workplace culture because I'm a mom of an 18-year-old. She's just finished her IB exams and next year's tertiary education, and then she's going out into the workplace. So my personal vested interest is to put that intentional, conscious knowledge and awareness in workplaces in Singapore and the region so that hopefully when she goes out into the workplace, it is something that is better than when I first joined the workforce a couple of decades ago.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Sabrina Uy, not Sabrina Oy, which people tend to call me. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Calm Collective Asia, and we are a mission-driven organization with the mission to normalize mental health in Asia and also at the workplace. So what we do is that besides the community building, engagement, and mental health literacy efforts that we do, we also work with a lot of organizations around the region as well as globally to help them bring about more well-being interventions and ensure that we tie them back to the bottom line and ensure that we can get that C-level buy-in to ensure the continuity of these efforts. So building on what Pamela shared, I am a millennial myself, and a lot of the work that we do is really around bridging the Gen Z, millennial, and the boomer workforce. So we do a lot of training and consultancy around building psychological safety at work to make sure that we can be prepared for change, all the change to come. So handing it off.
Hello everyone, I hope you have a very good morning and now it's afternoon. I'm Tianing from Accenture. I'm a business architectural specialist. For myself, basically I started off my career as a sports person. So I'm a former Paralympian, represented Singapore in sailing. Yeah. So eventually I retired for the sports scene and I came to the career pathway, and I started off with working from home because my company actually works from home. It's like kind of struck me to think about why person with disability have to constrain themselves working from home and why we couldn't get out to the physical place to actually work, because this is really the mentality 10 years back, I would say, because I don't see a lot of person in a wheelchair, especially women, in a wheelchair on the street. So it kind of strikes me to take step by step to enter the workforce in the physical environment, to start to do my part little small part I can to influence the people around me to let them know, how people with disability, especially people in a wheelchair, how can they can actually function in the physical environment. We can do the same thing, just basically differently. Yeah, and that's how, if let's say you were to come to my sports, you will have to play my rules. Yeah.
Well, a big welcome to you all. So thank you for joining us here today, and we're going to have a great conversation, I'm sure. I'm going to just kick off with, again, asking a question from the audience, which is how important, so we're going to narrow in on our topic today, how confident are you that leaders believe employee well-being and a healthy culture are strategic priorities for their organizations? So are you very confident that they believe that culture and well-being is a strategic priority, or you're not so confident? How do you feel? Just scan the QR code and you should be able to tell us how you feel. Very confident. Wow, okay. Yeah, that's kind of more as I thought you'd say. So some good things being done, but could be more, is how I'm reading this. All right, well, let's start with talking to the panel then today about leadership and how they address culture, well-being, etc. as a leadership priority. So leaders, of course, they're at the top of the organizations. They set the example within an organization, the tone and culture of organizations that they lead. Their leadership teams follow from them, etc., etc. So, Pamela, from your perspective, how important is it that leaders are leading from the front, setting an example with their own behaviors, talking perhaps about their own well-being and showing some sign of vulnerability themselves to give others permission to talk about their well-being?
Well, I think there's only one right answer to that. It is imperative. Leaders need to not just talk about it, but demonstrate it. Because at the end of the day, we know that leaders shape experience. Experience shapes that culture. So if leaders don't talk about it, share their personal experiences, if leaders don't walk that talk, because a lot of the time I do hear that people will tell me, during the town hall, my leader said ABC, but in reality, I see X, Y, Z. And we know that in organizations, what they see the leaders doing day to day is going to be the message they get. The leaders are going to normalize X, Y, Z despite talking about ABC. So yeah, it's absolutely imperative that they talk about it. Their actions match their words, and they authentically do it because, leaders are being observed. Consciously, unconsciously, people observe their actions and behaviors, the decisions they make, who they engage with, what they do in work, and even over the weekend when they talk about it. So if leaders don't demonstrate that commitment to a positive workplace culture, if they don't demonstrate that they do value well-being, employee well-being as well as theirs, that culture's not going to support it. It's going to cascade through the different levels, and what you see is going to be the X, Y, Z, not the ABC that they talk about.
And a great place to work, you've got some data looking back 5 years around how shifts in well-being have been changing at all levels within an organization, between leaders, middle managers, frontline leaders, etc. What are the trends you're seeing? Are you seeing that there's a connection between leader well-being and general employee well-being?
Yeah, absolutely. We partnered with the Johns Hopkins University Carey Business School to do a review of the data in Singapore from 2019 to 2023. One of the analysis that we did was specifically about the different levels. So there's the executives and C-suite. There's the middle managers who report to the C-suite. They're the frontline leaders who manage the teams on the ground, and the employees and individual contributors. We did see that well-being and workplace culture and experiences peaked in 2021 because, as we know, not just in Singapore but in the region, there was a lot of focus, intentional efforts around employee mental health, employee well-being. A lot of companies were intentionally enhancing their practices, introducing new practices, checking in, telling their middle levels, check in on people's well-being, find out how they're doing. And there was, in Singapore, a lot of agencies and government efforts around this, creating awareness, equipping, providing tips and tools. So it peaked in 2021. From 2022 and 2023, we did notice that it started going down again. Interestingly, though, at the C-suite, their well-being continued to be quite stable, whereas for other levels, it started going down, and for the staff and the frontline managers, we're seeing it go down more sharply. So the gap, the lived experience, the level of well-being, the level of the lived experience of workplace culture as a whole, the gap is widening between the most senior people and the people on the ground and frontline leaders.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've seen this same trend across many studies, that leaders feel they're doing a good job at well-being, and yet there's a massive disconnect between what their employees feel as well. So they may, and this really, I think, is at the heart of the difference between action and words, is that, yes, you can have some nice programs sitting on the side of an organization, but unless you're living it and setting an example, then the rest of the organization does not follow. So in that vein, I mean, one of the things that leaders can do, of course, is talk about their own well-being and demonstrate that they're human and vulnerable, not these resilient, know-it-all, tough people, that they have challenges too. And I've been a CEO for a long time, and I know it's a pretty lonely job, and you can't necessarily share your issues with the rest of your team freely, or it's not natural to do so. So anyone on the panel, do you have sort of anyone who comes to mind when you've observed leaders around anyone who's had the courage to show their own vulnerability and their own challenges, which has given the permission for other people in their teams to demonstrate their challenges and feel that's a safe space to do so?
Maybe let me share, because as maybe not a leadership role to be in future. In Essential, I'm pretty blessed to have a very good platform from my leadership, whereby we have a very special workday Picon that allows employees to actually submit our feedback, our concerns, in an anonymous platform actually. And this truly allows our leaders in Essential to really stay tuned with our employees' sentimental and our pulse regularly. And I really appreciate that this platform is there to create the connection. Actually, aside of that, something I really adopt of in Singapore, our leaders actually have this Ask Me Anything sessions that will be conducted regularly as well. And we can really candidly ask my leaders, especially the MDs, like the questions, burning questions, that he will really conduct the answer face-to-face or really virtually in an open space. I think this very closely connections is really what employee on the ground level really appreciated and really able to help the leaders to actually listen to us closely. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And I think building on that, I 100% agree. It's not enough to just walk the walk. You also have to talk the talk, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen that in the Asian context, a lot of great well-being or a lot of great initiatives are being done, but they're not well communicated. And the best way to communicate it is really from the top, because in a culture like Singapore's, like in Asia, we respect our seniors very much. It's very hierarchical, and therefore it's just very important for C-level or senior leaders to be able to share that these are the things that I'm doing for my well-being, and you know what? I'm human too. I don't have it all together, and this really gives permission to the rest of the organization to take care of themselves too. So we've done one of the initiatives that we've done with a client, Zulik Pharma. They're a logistics pharmaceutical company. We worked together with their CEO of the APAC region to make sure that he was able to talk about how he's been more compassionate towards himself, especially during the pandemic, during the work from home days. He was like, oh, I couldn't even exercise. I was getting, putting on a bit more. So that really humanizes people, and it really gives permission to the rest of the organization.
How do you folks manage your own well-being? What do you do to stay healthy?
What's with the finger point?
Yeah, we were just...
Okay, so we have a quarterly wellness time off that's given to us. So every quarter we have to use it. It's that intentional effort to make sure that and it's not cumulative, you can't hang on to it and then use it all at the end of the year. It's that intentional effort. And what I've done, I've had high tea with colleagues, so we time our wellness for that quarter off. We have high tea, then we went to watch a play. If I need to, if certain periods have been very bad, I will, book a massage, a complete 2.5 hour massage, and that really helps me. Sometimes I just want to have girl time with my daughter. Then I'll do my manicure. Time it with the school holidays. I'll do a manicure, pedicure, and have a high tea girl day with my daughter. So yeah, for me, it's all family and friends.
Yeah, I can share my... Well, okay, so recently what happened was that I got completely burnt out and I found myself in depression, and it was really hard. So as a founder, I'm kind of ashamed to say that I work every day. I used to, not anymore. And so when I found myself just overworking, I was compromising on sleep and not taking care of myself. I found myself completely unable to work for 4 or 5 weeks, and I was just trying to plow through, and it was really hard. Eventually, I had to take a 6-week break from work completely, and my co-founder said, Sabrina, you can't. You need to take a rest, and if everything, we lose 10 clients, so be it, right? And this was just in July. I came back to work in September, and since then, what's changed is that instead of operating at 100 to 140%, being 20% per day, I'm now working 70 to 90%, and part of that routine is to make sure that I'm sleeping enough. I was probably clocking in about 80 to 100 hours a week. Now I do much less. I try to do 4.5 days a week, and I go for a foot massage weekly. Simple stuff. I make sure I eat lunch because I get hangry. So, yeah, it's very basic stuff like that.
Yeah, so for myself, just a quick one before we move on. So I totally can relate to you because I'm going through this phase of life. I am same as well as I almost break down, meltdown. I can totally feel that, and because I actually went through this phase, I actually try to get my teams to not follow my footsteps. So I will actually conduct a very weekly, especially on Friday. I can't do it today since I'm here. So I will make sure that, guys, today is Friday and it's TGIF. Make sure I don't see any of you online. Yeah, I'm trying to have them to have a balance or work-life balance, especially and well-being have to be taken care of, especially. So I guess it's really, maybe we can't do it on our own. I mean, we need support from our surrounding, especially like our friends, our family, our teams, especially. So from our capacity as a leader, we do our best to actually check in and to remind our teammates that, look, work is not everything. We have deadlines, but that's not everything you have. Once you break down, that's it. Everybody will have to actually cover you. That takes a lot more than that as well. Yeah. So TGIF, have a break today and
go home and sleep
tonight.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having the confidence to talk about your story as well. And and it seems like you're full of energy now. So
I'm very energized now. I took 6 weeks off. I spent a lot of time in nature, so slept a lot. So yeah, very good.
I go for a walk every day, come rain or shine, just to make sure that I've got off-screen time, right? Just which really helps me for sure. I'm going to broaden this out now to culture writ large, beyond well-being. Look, many organizations have a set of lovely values. They do team bonding activities. They, they have programs to support well-being, like access to counseling and all this kind of beautiful stuff. It's well-intentioned, comes from the right place, but actually it doesn't make any difference to the daily employee experience. So, and that experience is governed by the interactions that you're having with your colleagues, your supervisor, your workload, etc. And it's well known, and I think you all know this, that around 70% of people leave organizations. Well, actually, they don't leave the organization, they leave their manager. And there's an awful amount of pressure on a manager, not just to deliver the goods in terms of the functionality of their role, but also now to care for their teams. So I know you've done a lot of work around this, Sabrina, around middle managers. Not only what skills is it that they need to be helped with to develop, how can they be supported as well? So just, unleash on us all, please.
So much, right? I mean, we were just having a prior chat about the expectation of a manager today, and I just have to hear from all of you, because just to get your attention as well. Who here is a manager? Raise your hand if you're a manager at work. Are you okay? Who here is being managed by someone else? By a man? Yeah. Okay. Who hates their manager? I'm kidding. Okay, keep your hand out. So I've been there, so I have left a manager before. What was it? Yeah, so how we help managers is just many ways. So I think the expectation of a manager right now is that I think there are a few things. So one is they're meant to be a functional coach. They want to make sure that everyone's able to do their work. And with the changes that we're seeing in work with Gen AI and so on and so forth, there's just more and more skills that you got to pick up from a functional perspective, right? Or else you'll get laid off. And then you also have the expectation from Gen Zs and millennials as well, saying hey, I want to grow in this role, so can you coach me to make sure that I become a better person, right? So how do you do that? So there's also the expectation for the manager to be a coach, to make sure they're growing this person. And then finally, there's also the expectation for the manager to take care of their well-being. Is this person sleeping enough? Are they, being fed? All these things. So what we're doing with manager training is that we're really looking at, from the first thing we're doing is really to understand how the manager role has evolved over time, specifically for the organization that we're working with. And what we do is that we work very closely with the learning and development teams, with their chief people officers, CHROs, to make sure that we're developing learning solutions that are relevant to the organization, and to make sure that we're enabling the managers as well as we can, while they're still making sure that they're well themselves. Because I think burnout is affecting the managers a lot. As Pamela shared. So, yeah, I can share a lot more, but I would love to hear from my fellow panelists.
Just I'm not going to let you off the hook. What specifically do you think, though, can be done to alleviate that pressure on managers so they have the headspace to care for their team?
So it's really about, I think this comes from the whole mental health world, right? So if you need to be able to take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. And what we're seeing is that a lot of managers, or I think a lot of people in general, forget ourselves as we are taking care of the work, we're taking care of the people, we have all these responsibilities. We might be a caregiver or a mom or a dad, right? And the last people that we take care of is ourselves. So in a lot of the work we're doing, it starts from that self-care, as cliched as it sounds. It's not just about bubble baths or massages, although it's part of it, but it's really about making sure that they can take care of their physical well-being as well as their mental health space, to make sure that they have that space to take care of other people. So it's also around enabling them to learn how to foster that psychological safety for their teams, which is really all about the interpersonal relationship between the manager and their teams. And so, that's so much to say. There's so much to say.
We related to this, we have a question from you all, and please, by all means, post any questions that you feel like. What are the initial, and I think I'll go back to you on this, Pamela. What are the initial 3 steps that organizations need to take in creating a strong, vibrant, healthy, safe culture?
The first thing that I think the company needs to do is to listen to the employees, because it's a lot of the time when we work with people, a lot of them say, hey, I'm going to define the culture as such, which is fine, the desired culture is fine, and then I'm going to introduce all these programs to reinforce this culture. But what they don't do is to hear from employees how these programs are working out, how these policies are going, how they, as leaders at every level, are demonstrating, the desired values and culture. So first thing is to understand how you're doing. If, let's say, you want a culture that has a strong psychological safety space, environment, measure the level of psychological safety in the workplace. And is it consistent? Are there particular groups, particular race, age, gender, level of staff, and then are your middle managers, your frontline leaders, are they equipped to create that psychologically safe space, that culture that allows people to speak up, to even suggest things that are out of the box, even to have a mindset that, hey, I can experiment. It's a trial and error, and if it turns out to be an error, I'm not going to get kicked out. So it's really equipping the people, the line leaders, to be able to be aligned with that culture. So the first thing is define what you want, have the values, that are aligned with that, and then listen to identify gaps in certain areas that you want to improve.
I would actually go one step further than that, if I may, and culture can't be imposed. So predefining culture, I always feel, is a bit of a mistake. I think it's got to something that is innate and is organic and cherished and nurtured, and it has to be fed from the bottom up, and then it defines itself. So, so if you're a leader or whatever, really, I mean, managing a small team, you can have your own micro-cultures within organizations. Let your team define it in the right way, obviously. And I think you'll find that if they own it, they'll thrive in it and they'll love it, right? So I'm not a fan of these, our culture is blah, 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 and it sounds nice on paper, but it's far from reality, right? So I'm getting quite a few questions here when I have to remember to press all my buttons, but whilst I'm doing that, Chanyin, and no disrespect by leading with you on this question, I want to talk about DEI a little bit. DEI has traditionally been defined within organizations as race, gender, sometimes sexual orientation, sometimes disability. There's new legislation in Singapore, and I think most of you are here today from Singapore, called the Workplace Fairness Legislation, which will come into force early next year in 2025, which broadens the definition of inclusivity to cover areas such as family status, age, mental health, etc. Just give me your perspective, maybe from two sides of a coin, about how you think organizations are truly living their DEI principles. And the two sides of the coin that I want you to talk about is first, by all means, your own experience, where you work today, right? And don't be shy, you can talk about things that they perhaps don't get right as well, right? But also, what is your observation of companies in general? I mean, you're at Accenture, you get to work with hundreds of other clients, right? So you have a bird's eye view of many organizations. So what's your perspective outside of your own working experience as well?
So first thing first, I think many of us, persons with disability in Singapore, we are waiting for this for quite some time. Yeah, so I guess this workplace law, the workplace fairness law is coming in, is really like a watershed for us in Singapore by shifting the whole perspective, from a voluntary guidelines that has been always previously to now a mandatory. That really set a very good foundations and mandatory legislations that companies will need to go after and to follow today, right? So it's also a good point for companies to start to think about it and to move beyond the traditional, whereby often seen as a box checking exercise in the employer's eyes, that this inclusivity is all about it on a very allow me to say like a surface level to be. So this actually leads to not like a lot of employees not able to actually feel that company is actually genuinely doing it, sincerely from themselves. So I believe that this workfare law coming in really helps a lot and to boost as a whole, not just person with disability, but in all aspect of it, right? Because we know that moving forward, companies will have to move to a future state of mind working, especially with COVID. It actually further introduced the idea of flexibility workplace that really allows employees to have the flexibility to work elsewhere, especially from home. That really helps a lot for the mental health being, right? They can set aside time for their mental health to maybe have a breather from human perspective, I feel. And also they can set out some time to be at home to look after their children or, their elderlies at home that they need to shoulder on their responsibility as a caregiver as well. So I think the mindsets have shifted. So be it you want it or not, I think companies, leaders will have to accept this and to really to work on it and to move on from here on. Yeah, so it's a lot about me working, moving forward from what I'm seeing, instead of really fixated to where we were previously traditional, whereby we really need employees to be back to our workplace. It's great, that actually enforces the human closeness, right? But at the same time, I feel flexibility, able to work elsewhere, give employees the benefits to help with their mental well-being as well. Yeah.
I recently ran a short survey informally. It wasn't sort of robust academic research, I must say, amongst about 70 odd CEOs about whether they were in favor of a 4-day week. I got 100% no, they were not, just out of interest. The workplace fairness legislation that we were referring to just now, folks, is said it comes into force in early next year, and it's the first time that that there has been any actual legislation around this kind of issue, around discrimination and inclusivity. It's enforceable. So unlike the current TAFPEC guidelines that are in place for employers in Singapore, with the new legislation, there will be penalties for non-compliance. So it now presents a business risk to get DEI right within organizations. So I think, and one of the sort of interesting things, I was looking at I'm a bit of a geek, so I was looking at all of the MOM, Ministry of Manpower data over the last year around what is the status of discrimination in Singapore. And for sure, organizations do have in place some general discrimination policies around things like gender and disability or what have you, but they don't have them for the broader societal things, as I mentioned, like mental health, age, etc. And these are now risks. And if you get these wrong, and so organizations have got a lot of work to do over the next 3 months to be prepared to live up to compliance for this new legislation when it comes into place. I just want to continue, and I want to get to a couple of questions from the audience too, but just lastly on this topic, and open to anybody, you know, when I started looking at DEI, maybe 20 years ago now as leader, I initially started from the gender space, as many of us did, and quickly sort of added on ethnicity and things like that too. I thought I was revolutionary about 15 years ago when I introduced unconscious bias training to my company, globally actually, even though I was APAC based. And there's subsequently been, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with unconscious bias and unconscious bias training, and it's become the de facto company tool, let's say, to say this is how we address DEI within our organization. But there's now growing evidence that actually unconscious bias training furthers stigmatization within organizations. It reinforces bad behaviors and self-justification that actually, I'm okay, I'm not biased. So do any of you have a kind of perspective on unconscious bias training, efficacy, and if that's not the right thing to do, what is?
Me. So I think DEI needs a whole rebrand. I don't agree with how it's called right now. So some context here. So I was in the US in April, and during this time, several states had already done away with their DEI initiatives, like Florida. They're like, we're not going to have DEI because that's, bias against the people who are not that diverse. So the US has completely gone back, they've just done away with the DEI initiatives all around. A lot of companies have now, it's now a political thing, as we've seen this week. And a lot of organizations, including Google, have laid off their heads of DEI. It's no longer relevant because, and my opinion here is that it was not tied to the bottom line enough. It was very much politicized. It's very like, I'm a minority, therefore, give me a seat. And that, ironically, is unfair to the E part of DEI, which is equity. And equity is all about leveling the playing field. And I think a lot of legislation like, the flexible working arrangements, that helps to level the playing field for people who cannot work from an office, like physically cannot work from an office, maybe it's social anxiety, whatnot, right? So I forgot the question, but it was just...
Just how should organizations tackle unconscious bias, basically?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost is really about making sure it's tied back to why this is important for the business. Because at the end of the day, that's how you're going to keep these very important initiatives going. I myself have a mental health condition. No one can tell if they're just looking at me. I have bipolar disorder. I take medication every day. I freak out, But I've been discriminated against too. When I was trying to get a job, the hiring manager was like, I don't think you're going to be able to cope at this place because it's very stressful, So discrimination does exist, and I think it's all about a complete rebrand and to make sure it's aligned to the bottom line.
So just a broader part of culture.
Strategically.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So
Very strong
I'm going to very quickly see if we can quickly answer a couple of questions from the audience. I have a great question here. We talked about culture being bottom-up driven, listening to employees, etc. The question is, can listening often to the employees raise expectations of the employees and put pressure on managers and leaders to make change? This is perfect for you.
I'll do
Perfect
it.
for you,
Okay.
Pamela.
Well, yes, if you're going to ask for feedback and then you're not going to do anything about it and you're not even going to get back to them and then it goes into the black hole, just don't ask. If you do ask for feedback, be prepared that you're actually going to address it. The answer need not always be yes. It could be yes, no, yes, but later because. So at the end of the day, the rationale, closing that feedback loop, taking into account that feedback when you make decisions, factoring it in because that's what employees are saying, that's their experience. Take that into account. When you go back, explain the rationale if it's no, if it's yes, but not now because, it could lead to change. There might be an expectation that you have to change depending on the feedback, but there is no clear-cut yes or no. But yes, you got to get back to someone if you ask for their feedback, you got to get back to them.
Okay, fantastic. That was a perfect answer, spot on. So I've got 35 seconds left, so you've got 1 second each almost. Tell our listeners here today, what is one innovative thing that you've seen, just one innovative thing that you've seen which has helped company culture or the employee experience?
4-day work weeks.
4-day work week, yep.
Work from home. That's something.
Work from home.
I think that's a flexible arrangement. I think, something that we would want to.
For me, it's evaluating your middle managers. Yeah, because they are the ones that make someone go back and say, hey, I had a great day at work, or not.
Right, fantastic. One little thing that I introduced a couple of years ago was start making well-being part of the onboarding process for new employees. And so that when they join the team, it's a very simple thing to do. Ask them about their well-being, ask them about what stresses them out, what doesn't, what types of environments they like, and then that creates permission for there always to be that conversation. It's a very simple tactical thing to embed into your organization. Look, we're out of time. It's flashing 0000 at me. So thank you very much all. I'm sorry we didn't get to many of your questions, but I hope I really appreciate the panel for being open, honest, candid, and so knowledgeable as well. So thank you all.